God confidence gives you the right answers to oppressors. You know, God's confidence is amazing. When he builds up confidence in you, then you can stand and respond to people appropriately for the situation as he gives you, the words to speak. And that's one of the things that I love about the Holy Spirit being in us as those who's accepted what Christ did on the cross for us. And we've been looking at the story of Gideon, and we are in chapter 8 of Judges, and we are picking up at chapter 8, verse 1, and we will go through chapter 17. And the men of Ephraim said unto him, Why hast thou served us thus, that thou couldst callest us not when thou went to fight with the Midianites? And they did chide with him sharply. So they argued with him. So they were upset that they didn't get a chance to go. But they're not understanding that Gideon already had too many people and God made him pare them down to 300. But they're upset because they didn't get to partake in the victory, right? And then we go on this, the second verse. And he said unto them, What have I done in comparison to you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? God hath delivered into your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeb, and what was I able to do in comparison to you? Then their anger was abated toward him when he had said that. So then that cooled them off. Now I want to just take you back for a minute to what had happened. So what he had done was he had sent messengers to Ephraim and said, Come down against the Midianites and take before, this is in chapter 7, verse 24, and take before them the waters unto Bethbara and Jordan. Then all the men of Ephraim gathered themselves together and took the waters unto Bethbara and Jordan. And they took 2 princesses of the Midianites, Oreb and Zeb, and they slew Oreb upon the rock of Oreb, and Zeb they slew at the winepress of Zeb, and pursued the Midian, and brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon on the other side of the Jordan. And so he had them come in to take a part. And they were the ones who slew the kings, right? And so now they're just like, okay, we wanted to have done more, right? But they weren't supposed to do more. But he's saying, celebrating what you did do, because you took care of and dealt with the 2 mighty kings. And so anyway, so we go on. So that kind of cooled them down a bit. But I like the fact that God gave him the words to say to them to calm them down. And see, when you get that God confidence in you, you will have it to answer people when they stand against you. Verse 4, and Gideon, chapter 8, verse 4, and Gideon came to Jordan and passed over, and he and the 300 men that were with him faint, yet pursuing them. And he said unto the men of Succoth, Give, I pray you, loaves of bread unto the people, and follow me. For they be faint, and I am pursuing after Zebah, Zalmunna, kings of Midian. And the princesses of Succoth said, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in thy hand, that we should give bread unto thine army? It's like, you've already captured them. Why should we help you? Well, that's kind of anyway. And then verse 7, and Gideon said, Therefore, when the Lord hath delivered Zebah and Zalmunna into thy hand, then I will tear your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and their briars. Verse 8, and he went up thence to Penuel and asked unto them likewise. The men of Penuel answered him as the men of Succoth had answered him. And he spoke unto the men of Penuel, and saying, When I come again in peace, I will break down this tower. Now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Korkor, and their host with them, about 15,000 men. Wow. All that were left of all the host of the children of the east. for there fell 120,000 men that drew sword. And Gideon went up by the way of them that dwelt in the tents on the east side of Nobath and Jogabah, and brought the host, and smote the host, for the host was secure. So he defeated them. And when Zebah and Zalmunna fled, he pursued after them, and took the two kings of Midian, Zebah and Zalmunna, and discomforted all the host. And Gideon the son of Joash returned from battle before the sun was up, and then in verse 14, and caught a young man of the men of Succoth, and inquired of him, and he described unto him the princesses of Succoth, the elders thereof, even 70 men. Verse 15, and he came unto the men of Succoth and said, Behold, Zebah and Zalmunna, with whom you did upbraid me, you scolded me, saying, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in thy hand, that we should give bread unto the men that are weary? So they didn't want to help the ones that had been fighting and were weary. And he took the elders of the city and the thorns of the wilderness and briars, and with them he taught the men of Succoth. He taught the men of Succoth, and he beat down the tower of Penuel and slew the men of the city. So what he promised he was going to do, because they didn't want to support those that fought, to just give them some food. Hello, there's 300 men fighting the enemy on your behalf, and you won't even give them food? You won't even help? Okay, fine. That tells me whose side you're on. And so it was like, Gideon's like, if you're not on my side, then when I come back, I'll have to deal with you. Because they were not on his side, and it was clear. And so he kept his promise. This is the thing about confidence. When you have confidence in God, one, you will be a promise keeper. You will keep your promise. You also won't say idle words. And I caution you, idle words can get you into trouble. Words that you speak that you don't follow up and do what you say you're going to do. It's better to not make a promise than it is to make a promise and not follow through. And the reason why that is, and my mentor Myron Golden says this very well, he says that reason why our confidence is not as strong as it should be is because we are the only ones that have heard the confidence that the words that we have spoken, and we have broke our promises to ourselves, over and over and over again. And we're the only ones that have heard that. And so when we've heard that over and over again, after a while, we don't believe ourselves anymore. And so here he made a promise and he kept that promise. And so Gideon clearly had the Spirit of the Lord with him and working with him, and he was fighting on behalf of God, and God gave him victory. And so we need to know that when you have God confidence, you will have the right answers for those who try to oppose you or who oppose you. And so we can expect the same thing. So as we go forward, as the times are in a very unique setting, that when we stand for God, God will stand for us. So anyway, that's what I want to share with you today. We will pick up, today is Friday, right? And so on Monday, unless God gives me something else in between, we will pick back up with confidence, and we will start in verse 18 of chapter 8 of Judges and continue with the story of Gideon and talk about confidence. So anyway, God bless you guys. Thank you for being here in the know with Deborah O. Bye for now.